again tomorrow by Anonymous, read by the Devil's Advocate 18. Work has been stressful. Well, when was it not these days, honestly? He might have pulled off some things for later as he focused on another work and was now forced to complete the remaining paperwork just before the due date. It was around 1 a.m. already, but he was far from finished, since he still had a whole pile on his desk that needed to be filled out for the next day. This was his own fault. He kept putting it off, and now he has to do it all at once in consequence. He was still at his work office preparing to go home when he finished the paperwork. It'll save him some time. Tired, stressed, and could, in consequence, feel the clear need to regress, but couldn't right now. He started working on his papers near 8 p.m., so he'd been working on them around 5 hours. 5 hours, and he wasn't even halfway done with it. God, why did he put it off till the last second? If he had worked on it throughout the week, he wouldn't have had to stay so late. He knew if he didn't finish his work by morning, aka 8 a.m., there would be consequences, and he really did not want to disappoint Mori in any way possible. It's the last thing you want to do if you want to last long in the Port Mafia. He sighed as he started working on another paper. It would be done by the next morning if he kept working steadily, but even so, this was exhausting. He accidentally moved his hand near his glass of water, forgetting it was there, resulting in it spilling right on his papers. He hurriedly moved his other papers to the side, avoiding any water from spilling on them, and quickly soaked up the water that had spilled on the desk with nearby tissues. The paper he had been working on was absolutely ruined. He'd have to reprint and rewrite it entirely, a tremendous waste of time that he didn't have. He was tired and mad, and he felt even more stressed now. It might have been a bit more irritating, illogical reactions in consequence of his anger, but he grabbed the glass that had previously ruined half an hour of his work and threw it hard against the floor, ending up with it, of course, shattering now shards of glass, messily landing on the hardwood floor. He stands there for a few seconds, but when he calms down a bit, he looks down in horror at the shards of glass sprawled over the floor. Gods, why would he do that now? He had just made a mess on the floor to clean up, which would make him even more a waste of time. He should have worked on this earlier. He should have been more organized instead of just putting it off until the very last second. He wasn't going to be able to submit his work on time, and he would rather not have to think about the consequences right now, or he'd start panicking too. He dug his hands into his hair, gripping it hard enough till it hurt. He let out a groan as everything suddenly overwhelmed him. He closed his eyes. This was all too much, and he couldn't even do anything about it to solve it now. Maybe Mori will realize how bad of a worker he is and actually fire him. Such an idiot. Why didn't he start his work any sooner? He let out a sob because apparently he was immature enough to start crying about this, and he buried his face in his hands as if it would help him escape the situation. He was startled out of his thoughts when suddenly he heard a knock resonating off the office door, and he couldn't even get himself to give any kind of response and just hoped whoever it was would take the hint and leave. A few seconds later, the door opened and they walked in. He quickly looked up and saw Chuuya walking into his office. Right, he forgot his office door didn't have a lock. What was the noise I heard? Chuuya started, but stopped his speech when he looked at Akutagawa and noticed he was crying, since he didn't have time to compose himself before the other entered. What's going on here? He tried, but he couldn't come up with a good enough excuse on the spot, because he wasn't about to admit that he was having a meltdown in his office because of work he'd had a whole week to complete. It's nothing, His voice cracked and tears blurred his field of vision, and another traitorous sob escaped his throat, so he held his head down roughly by grabbing his hair in stress, not wanting to be seen like this. Thought the other would leave, but apparently not. He heard footsteps approaching him, and suddenly a hand tugged gently at his wrists. "Hey, Akutagawa, don't do that. You'll give yourself a headache." He whined, but didn't object as he allowed the other to gently pull his hands away from his hair. "Did something happen?" "Works too much. My fault," he somehow managed to mumble out. But the way he sounded, he could tell that he had dropped into headspace because of his earlier meltdown, and he had just hoped to chalk it up to a lack of a coherent sentence, to the fact of he was crying. Chuuya didn't really seem to understand what he meant by that, and looked around for a second, his eyes meeting the broken shards of glass on the floor. "What happened to the glass on the floor?" "Threw it," he sheepishly admitted, sniffling quietly, somewhat calming down a bit. "And why's that?" Chuuya questioned, raising a brow. Akutagawa took a few seconds to answer, wondering if the other would get mad at him if he stated the reason, and he couldn't just stray to silence either. "Got mad. Wasn't thinking." "I see," the other answered, looking thoughtful for a few seconds for some reason before going on. "Can I ask you something?" Akutagawa simply nodded in response, waiting for the other's question. "Are you by any chance feeling small?" the redhead asked, even though there wasn't an ounce of anger in his voice or anything. Akutagawa was startled enough by the question he felt tears come up in his eyes again. "Wait, don't cry, all right? I'm not mad or anything, I just need to know," Chuuya gently tells him. Akutagawa very hesitantly nodded in response, scared of the reaction Chuuya might have. "Okay, it's okay. I'm not mad or anything," Chuuya answered in a gentle tone. "It's getting late. Don't you think you should stop working?" Akutagawa shook his head because he couldn't stop working when his deadline was tomorrow morning. "Can't. Deadline's tomorrow." "Look, it's nearing 2 a.m. I doubt you're even able to work in this state," Chuuya stated. "I'll take care of it, okay? I'll bring what you managed to finish and tell Mori you're too sick to finish the rest. How does that sound?" "That's lying," he objected weakly. "He won't find out. I'm very convincing when I have to be, you know," Chuuya reassured him with a wink. "Even if you were to start working now, you wouldn't finish in time." He was right, of course. He felt as if he kept working any longer, he would internally explode or something. He didn't really manage to come up with another argument, so he just nodded. "Good. Let's not have you stay here any longer than necessary, all right? We can clean up the glass tomorrow," Chuuya stated. "Let's get you home to rest. You're probably overworked yourself. Do you want me to help carry you? It's pretty late. There's no one around." The prospect of getting carried sounded awfully nice at the moment, so he nodded. The other crouched down. "Hop on. I'll give you a piggyback." He did, and the other stood back up, easily carrying him with his strength. He let out a small giggle when the other stood back up. He suddenly felt very tall, like he was practically conquering the world. It felt really nice. He buried his face in Chuuya's shoulder as he started walking, and the other didn't seem to particularly be bothered by it. He closed his eyes to rest them, as he could feel his hours of staying up late catching up to him. It would be fine with him just closing them for a few seconds. He unsurprisingly fell asleep and somehow awoke feeling very comfortable in his bed the next day, wearing pajamas that he definitely didn't remember changing into. He wasn't about to question it, but he felt very grateful that Chuuya bothered to calm him down and take him home, and the other didn't mention it. This was Try Again Tomorrow by Anonymous, read by The Devil's Advocate 18. I hope you enjoyed. Until next time.